Hello, my soul-seeking friends. It's Shanna. Thank you so much for listening to Sense of Soul podcast. Enlightening conversations with like-minded souls from around the world, sharing their journey of finding their light within, turning pain into purpose, and awakening to their true sense of soul. If you like what you hear, show me some love and rate, like, and subscribe. And consider becoming a Sense of Soul Patreon member, where you will get ad-free episodes, monthly circles, and much more. Now go grab your coffee, open your mind, heart, and soul. It's time to awaken. Hey, it's Shanna. Welcome back. In this episode, we have Karen Chalman. Karen is an Ayurveda counselor and practitioner. She pursued her Ayurvedic studies at Kripalu, earning the title of Ayurvedic Health Counselor. Building on this foundation, she continued her education and guidance from Dr. Anusha Sehgal, achieving the status of Advanced Ayurvedic Practitioner. Karen brings a well-rounded approach to healing that addresses the mind, body, and spirit. And I'm super honored to have Karen here with us today to share with us the ancient practice of Ayurveda. Hi, Karen. How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm good. Nice to meet you.
To meet you too. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, it's so funny. I was like, who is she? How is she on my schedule? And I was like racking my brain. And then finally I was remember, wait a minute. I think it was Lydia from Instagram. Yeah. So you weren't in my email, and I was like, oh my gosh.
You're
And
like,
so
who is this stranger?
Well, it was kind of good because I had to stalk you to try to figure out who you were. So I learned a lot about you.
Oh, you did?
I did. And I listened to an interview with you and one of your friends in
Oh,
New
Phoebe?
York. I think so. Yeah. It was super good. I really enjoyed it. I was all into it. You should write a book about that.
I know, I really should. I really should.
Yeah.
It's
It was really fun.
experience. So, I used to live near you then.
Yes, I do know. Yeah. You were over in Boulder.
See, I wish I had met you when I lived there. I had a hard time making community when I was there. But, astrologically speaking, we're all going to find community in different places.
Evidently.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thanks so much for coming on. I'm excited to talk a little bit about, or a lot about, our Ayurveda. I just have a hard time saying that word.
Think about it like this. I, like your eye, your
Veda.
Mm-hmm.
Ayurveda. I got it now.
I know when I do like in-person presentations, I have a slide with like an emoji translator. It's literally like an eye and then like the finger pointing you.
Yeah.
Veda.
I'm gonna get it one day.
It's a weird word.
I think I got it now. Ayurveda.
You're a pro.
Oh my God. I can't believe no one ever told me this. So that way I didn't sound like a freaking idiot the whole time trying to say it the whole interview.
I learned that little trick when I was at Kripalu, which is where I did my first part of my study for Ayurveda.
Okay. I don't even know what part of the world is that in?
It's in it's like Western Mass in the Berkshires.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I haven't ventured over to the East very much.
Yeah.
I'm originally from New Orleans.
Oh, nice. I think I heard that in one of your podcasts. I listened to the one about aliens. I totally loved. I was like so into it because I love all that.
I know, me too. I love talking about that because for me, it's part of, the uncovering and the shedding of my conditions. I was left with, there was more possibilities out there than I realized.
Yeah. Yeah.
It
was interesting. Like the way that you were describing some of the parts of the Bible. I'm like, oh, I want to go read that now. Like I've never read the Bible. I was raised Catholic. I've never read it. I'm like fascinated. So yeah, I learned some things.
So you were raised Catholic. So how did you end up where you are?
How did I? You mean like a Buddhist Ayurvedic practitioner?
Yeah. You had to do some shedding, so I'm ready to hear your story. I'm taking off my sweater so I can get comfortable because I know it's a good one.
I'm also a designer, and
Ah,
I've had a long career doing video and animation, and something that I also really love. But then, through my own life circumstances, which is one of the things that I love about your podcast, how it's like how things change and transform us. I had a lot of health issues, and Western doctors could not tell me anything other than don't eat those foods that are causing you problems. And when that list of foods exceeds 30,
mm,
it's a problem, like
yeah.
how do you live? And so that's what led me to Ayurveda. But well, that's what led me to focus more into Ayurveda. My whole life, I've kind of looked more into alternative health options. Like right out of college, I actually worked at a herbal apothecary just because
That's
I was trying to
fun.
figure out what I was going to do with my life. I didn't, I hadn't gone into my design career yet. And I worked there for about a year and I learned all about herbology just through doing that job. And, it's just something that I've always been passionate about and really interested in. But, I'm also an artist and a designer. And so kind of like bringing all these things together. But then when my own health started having all these challenges, it's like, okay, now what? And I went to this Ayurvedic doctor and he gave me some advice that I was like, if I weren't in this bad of shape, I don't know if I would have done it. Some of it was so simple that it's like, oh, how effective is that going to be? And some of it was like, oh yeah, I'll try that herb or, I'll do that or sure, I'll eat those foods on this list. And, I was in such a state that I did it all. And it was the first thing that actually made a difference for me.
Wow.
And so then, you know, for me, I'm like, why?
Mm-hmm.
Why did those things make a difference? It wasn't enough just that it helped me.
I'm
I
like
had
that
to,
too.
you know, I'm
Secret
like,
at heart.
I've got to know why. So yeah, that's what led me to going to Kripalu, which is in Western Mass in the Berkshires. It's a school of yoga and Ayurveda. They do all kinds of things here. It's a beautiful campus. And I signed up for a foundations of Ayurveda there. And, I just thought that would be all I would do. Sure, I'll, learn a little bit there. And then I'm like, well, I guess I could just keep going and do like the Ayurveda health counselor track. And okay, let's do that. So then a year later, I was, an Ayurveda health counselor. And then I'm like, but I still don't feel like I fully understand what happened to me, even with all that training. And so then I continued on with one of the instructors that I worked with at Kripalu, who teaches out of Boston and pursued the Ayurveda practitioner level of training. And so on the practitioner level, you study disease.
Mm,
And so, on the Ayurvedic health counselor level, you understand how to maintain the health of the healthy. And so, which is important. We don't know that enough in our lives. We eat for taste and enjoyment and for a family history. There's all these reasons that we enjoy food, but we don't really understand how to eat to live long lives.
mm.
And so, that's what you learn on the health counselor training. But then practitioner, it's like, what do you do when things go wrong or when they get imbalanced to a certain level? Yeah.
So it started out for me like very similar because I was diagnosed with like fibromyalgia, ADHD, anxiety, I had all of these things. Insane. Doctor was like, here, do this, take all of these pills, and you'll be fine. It's numbed out by all the pills, numbed out. I mean, of course, I didn't have any more pain, but I had no more emotions. My memory was affected. And so I was looking for something else. And I wanted to know why. I was around 30 at
Yeah.
the time, and I was pretty healthy. And so why did I have all this pain? And I really, looking back, I mean, it was a lot of stress. That was kind of like when I realized, oh gosh, we're more than a meat suit. So it's actually more than just what you're putting into your body because we're multidimensional.
Yeah.
How does it fit in with Ayurveda?
Wait, how does what fit in with Ayurveda?
that multi-dimensional part, like I know there's different aspects of it. So like what are the doshas stand for?
So, we have the doshas of the body, which are vata, pitta, and kapha.
Mm.
And, just a quick overview of those is that, there are these kind of key elements: earth, water,
Mhm.
fire, air, and ether. It's kind of like they come together into these functional units that we call doshas. So, like, earth and water come together to form kapha. So that's like very like the ground that we stand on and the physicality of our body.
Okay.
And then there's water and fire, which come together to form pitta, which is like, okay, how do water and fire come together? But you can think of it like a liquid fire, like lava, like heat that's moving in a liquid form, right? So that's kind of like pitta. And this is at the most basic level because there's so many levels of all these things. And then vata is air and ether. And so
Okay.
it's like open spaces of the body or like the movement of the body. Vata is the only one that moves. And so these are like physical and space aspects of the body. But then we also have doshas of the mind, which you don't hear about. They're not like in the dosha quizzes, but the doshas of
Okay.
the mind are tamas, rajas, and sattva. So tamas is like, and it's tamas. It's like kind of heaviness. It's what allows us to fall asleep. So we all have all of these doshas, right? We all have vata, pitta, and kapha. We can't not have kapha or else we wouldn't have a body. We can't not have pitta
Um,
or else we wouldn't have heat. We have body heat. And we can't not have vata because there would be no space for food to digest and for like open cavities. Think about all of our organs that have those cavities. So we have to have all of these things. But we're kind of dominated by one or two of them. So, and some people have more than of one than another. So of these doshas of the mind, then tamas lets us sleep, but when it gets imbalanced, it can lead to depression because that heaviness, like, oh, I don't want to get up in the morning,
mhm.
that could be, it could be different things, but it could be that kind of imbalance of tamas or excess tamas. And then rajas is the opposite. Rajas is like, oh my gosh, I have to go, 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 like our culture, like running from this place to next and that kind of mental agitation when it gets imbalanced. And again, we need register, we would sleep all the time. So we have to have a healthy level of both of those. But when they get too much, it can take us to these states of mind that aren't as healthy. And then sattva is this peaceful quality of mind, right? It's like that quality when we're out in nature, like if you go up the Flatirons in Boulder, and you're like out in nature and looking out over this view and you're watching the birds go by and you're feeling the wind in your hair and you're just you feel content. It's that contentment. And that's sattva, and you can never have too much of it. So I guess I kind of went into the doshas of the mind because you were asking about the multidimensional person. And, even with vata, there are aspects of the mind with that because there's so much correlation between the way that vata moves and the way that our mind moves.
They all have to work together
Mhm.
for it to be this healthy balance.
Exactly.
So I was reading this book that this beautiful woman, Rajashri Ma, had wrote, and it's Kali Ki Reiki. In her book, every time I saw the word dark mother, because she was talking about Kali Ma, I kept seeing dark matter.
Oh,
And
interesting.
then, yeah, I went down this very deep hole of information and ended up looking at this Ayurveda, almost diagram, and somehow it all made sense to me that creation, this dark matter, and, you know, the dark mother has been hidden. But of course, you can't have creation without a mother. I mean, it's just silly to even think otherwise.
Right.
But yeah, there was all of this. And actually, there was this symbol of matter, or like the atom,
like I always think about, okay, where did Ayurveda come from, And there are like books and movies on things, but you almost have to like imagine back to this time, like 5,000 years ago. And, we weren't living in these large civilizations. It was people living in the jungle. There was no electricity.
Right.
There's no apps.
Okay.
There's no internet.
Right.
But what they had was this deep attunement to their own bodies.
Yeah.
And that's what Ayurveda teaches us. It teaches us to be attuned to what we're experiencing, to what we're eating, to what we're feeling, how we're being affected. We become so desensitized to this. It's like, we're kind of told in our culture that all calories are calories and you just like eat things,
Right.
you energy.
Right.
But there are different types of energy that you can take in. There are different qualities of energy.
Right.
And there are different qualities of substances, going back to the matter that you were talking about, like what are the qualities of matter that we're taking into ourselves that are then becoming the matter of our bodies? There are basically three different types of people that
Yeah.
process matter in different ways. And that's the Vata, Pitta, and Kapha person. There's different
Yeah.
variations of that, but those three main groupings. But then you can also classify foods in that same way. So, like, let's
Okay.
say a carrot, it's a root vegetable. It's very grounding.
Hmm.
It's orange in color. It has all these different qualities. It's sweet. And when you start to break that down, you start to see how it can affect the qualities of the different people that are in those different.
So it's almost like alchemy.
It is. It is because you're thinking about what you're taking in to bring
Yeah.
balance to yourself and not just eating to eat. You're eating to bring balance.
And everything has an energy behind it. If I'm going to purchase something and there's like this beautiful story behind it, like the person who created it, I mean, I love that. The energy is so great and it feels so good. And I feel that way about food too. When I go over to like my in-laws, they have this beautiful garden and it tastes so good. Or what about like your mom's sandwich? I always say this, like nobody makes a better sandwich than my mom. I can't make that. There's this love behind it, right?
Yeah.
So I was wondering that. So if say this chocolate bar is got full of love, is it going to be that bad for me? And then we have our genetics. What have people been eating in your lineage for so many thousands of years, that has been passed down that maybe you should maybe eat because you've been taking on this one and it's not, and this culture and this food is not working for you. What do you think about both of those?
Well, I just have to jump in with your second point because it's something that I think about all the time
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
this kind of generational aspect and genetic aspect because living in America, we're
Yeah.
the melting pot, right?
Yeah.
So we're not just like living by what our ancestors ate. We're living by what everybody's ancestors ate
Ooh, a
from
lot.
every climate of every region
Every
of the
night.
world
What
at
culture are
every
we going
moment.
with? Right.
Yeah, in one meal.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Like, like think about like big buffets that have like an Italian section and a
It's so
Mexican
true.
section and a Chinese section, and you can like eat all around the world. And were our bodies meant to do that? I mean,
Right.
ultimately, from an Ayurvedic point of view, it comes down to our digestive fire and how strong it is.
Hmm.
And if it's really strong, yes, we can do that. But if we do that too much, will that digestive fire remain strong?
Mm.
And depending on the person, sometimes that can be problematic.
Yeah. It just makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if your family came from one area for generations and only ate from that food, and then you go and start eating pizza, ouch.
I know, right?
Yeah.
I have to tell the story. I think you'll really enjoy it. Like my family is predominantly Polish. My mom's entire
Mhm.
side of the family is Polish. And I've recently been cooking all of this celery soup and cooking just a
Oh,
lot of celery, and it's so good. And every time I do it, I think of my mom because, when you're cooking Polish food, there's often a lot of celery and onions that get cooked together. And she would always call it Polish potpourri.
oh, yeah.
I know. And so now whenever I'm making my celery soup, I
Yeah.
think of cooking.
Yes. So there's like this energy connected to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And her energy is probably connected to her mom or wherever it was passed down.
Exactly. Yeah, because my grandmother always cooked in that way as well.
So
So yeah.
funny. Yeah, but it's so true. I mean, being from New Orleans, I got all kinds of, things that are very specific to their culture and tradition. And whenever I eat it, it feels right in my body, right?
Yeah.
And that's what you're looking for. And that's what I love about what you said a few minutes ago. It really hit me because you said, think back 5,000 years ago, which I really try to do. In my journey, I've been doing so much history study that, I almost feel like I have time traveled many times back into this place. And then when I come back, I'm like, oh my God, what are we doing? And I think that I never thought about that, but thinking about how really all they didn't have calorie counters. They didn't have this evidence-based research on what's good and bad. All they had was this discernment with their body.
And
That's
and to
amazing.
take note how things processed.
Yeah.
Like it's amazing. We don't do that.
No.
We're just like, oh, I don't feel good. I don't know why I
Right.
didn't
Take a
buy food.
Tums. Yeah.
Yeah,
Keep
I'm just
going.
gonna cover it up with something. But sometimes it's the combination of things. And in Ayurveda, there's this whole rich kind of instruction on something that's called Varuta. And Varuta is improper food combining, specific rules on things that should never be taken together. And a lot of times when you trace back in more ancient cultures, you'll see these things, but
Mhm.
people stop doing it over time. Like one example is to never eat fish with milk.
Oh, I thought you were going to say cheese because that was the one I was
But
thinking of.
that's the same.
Yeah.
Dairy. I should
Very.
clarify dairy. So fish with dairy. Like when you look at Italian culture, like you would never put a cream sauce on a fish. But you
Mm-hmm.
see that here now,
I
like
do.
where things are combined. And that is a recipe for a disease state in Ayurveda.
Wow.
Yeah.
And
So
that's because of their experience over thousands of years.
over watching and collecting. Exactly. And another rule that this one always breaks all my clients' hearts.
Uh-oh.
I
Don't say
know.
chocolate and peanut butter. Okay.
No, I won't say that. To never combine fresh fruit with any other food.
Really?
It has to do with how things kind of break down when we're digesting.
Okay,
And
so they need their own time.
fruit processes faster than anything else. And
Okay.
so if you take it with something else, it can end up kind of like fermenting in the process because it's getting overcooked.
Ooh.
So, and again, if someone has a strong enough digestive fire, they're going to be fine. But
Mhm.
it's if you're doing all of these things, and this is just two different things that I'm
Yeah.
mentioning, but if you're doing a lot of different things over a long period of time, those things can wear down that digestive fire. And
Right.
then that's when all kinds of problems can pop up.
You know, I had laryngitis, and I feel like I am permanently damaged from that time. And one of the reasons is because I kept going through it. I refused to have laryngitis. I never took a break. So I would take almost daily all of this ibuprofen to help with the inflammation and Dayquil with it. And then one day I was eating a bag of wasabi almonds, which I love wasabi almonds, but my stomach didn't. And I ended up in the hospital with acute ulcer colitis.
Yeah.
First thing they asked me, have you been taking a lot of, ibuprofen? And I had. And then the wasabi almonds was just kind of like the kicker, cherry on top.
It's the straw that broke the camel's back.
I was in there
Yeah.
for days. I mean, it was bad. And it ended up being a good thing though, because for one, I had to fast, for two, I had to cleanse. I came out, I hadn't ate or drank anything in 4 days, and I felt better than I ever had. I mean, everyone's like, you should rest. And I'm like, because I'm cleaning when I get home. I hadn't been home in 4 days. I'm like, no, I have more energy than ever. I don't know what's wrong with me. My mind feels clear. My eyesight was better.
We would say that there was pitta aggravation that happened because think of all the heat that gets generated through all of that ibuprofen that's going in. You're using it to try and cover up a different problem, but it's also very heating in the stomach. And then that wasabi on top of it. This may sound like out there, but eyesight, when pitta level becomes too high over an extended period of time, it can affect the vision.
There
And
you go.
so what you're saying does not surprise me at
Makes
all.
perfect sense, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was blown away. But then I became more conscious about what I mean, unfortunately, I'm scared to eat wasabi almonds, but I love them. I do. They're a great little snack. You know what I mean? If you're gonna, I don't know, but I'm staying away from them. I still eat almonds sometimes, but even that I'm scared of because, actually that was another blessing. They said you don't have little pockets in your stomach.
Diverticulitis.
They
Okay.
don't have that, but you have pockets that could turn into that eventually. It was great awareness, and I'm glad that I went through it because it brought me back to my body. Because a lot of times we get into this spiritual realm and we're just like, kumbaya, you know? And then you forget about this is your temple. This is that what houses your energy.
Yeah. Well, and there's things that you can do to rebuild and rehabilitate the stomach, and then also your intestinal mucosal lining, and make sure that it's kind of rehabilitated from that experience that it went through. And so, like in Ayurveda, what we would do is kind of trace all of that back for you. Like,
Mhm.
why did the laryngitis happen?
Mm.
What were the causative factors of that? Because we know that the causative factor of some of what's happening in your stomach and in your intestine is because of the ibuprofen, and then the wasabi was an aggravating factor on it and it worsened it.
Right.
If you wanted to have some of that once in a while, you could almost like test things out. But I would recommend first, like, you know, kind of rebuild and rehabilitate what's kind of broken down in there. And it's hard to say. It's not like I can tell you go do X because, when I work with a
Right.
client, very thorough, we go through your entire history. We and map out, what your personal constitution was when you were born, like what was your blend of Vata, Pitta, and Kapha? And then where are you now? How much of each of those do you have now? And then the goal isn't for us all to be the same. The
Right.
goal is for you to come back to who you are. And so that's a spiritual component to me, because it's like we're always trying to get back to who we are when we can lose our way,
Yes.
and that can happen in our spiritual lives, and that can also happen in our bodies because, we can pick up different habits, or even, I was talking to a friend this morning and it's like, oh, I've just been, I used to only have one square of chocolate each day. And then, now it's like maybe four squares of chocolate, and just realizing that we do this over time, and then all of a sudden there might be ramifications from that. And how do we undo that and rebalance?
I mean, I heard that every 7 years your taste buds change. Is that true? Have you heard that one?
I am not surprised by that because isn't it every 7 years that our
Cycle.
entire body is completely
Your
new?
cells. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really weird, but it is true. I mean, there's things that I like that I never liked before. And of course, COVID really screwed me up with my taste. I didn't have taste for like a year after I had COVID.
Oh, I'm so
That was
sorry.
yeah, but yeah, it was like, this is no longer enjoyable. I mean, I can remember what it tastes like, and I know I love this, and I remember loving it, but it tastes like nothing anymore. And when you have I have texture issues for sure. So if it doesn't taste good and it's got a texture that took a long time even to try, then we're done.
Well, especially if you don't have flavor to like
Yes. I
overcome
mean,
the texture issue, then what do you do?
absolutely. But you know what? There's certain things as I get older, they don't feel good in my body. But this is because I'm more aware of my body.
Mhm.
It doesn't feel good in my chest. You have to listen to that.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's telling you.
Our bodies often do communicate to us,
Yeah.
and it usually starts with something small. And this was something I learned from one of my teachers, and I always think of it. It's like first it's like just a little like
Hmm.
and then it's like,
Yeah.
knocking. And then
Uh-huh.
if we don't listen, then the door gets busted down, and then we have to deal with it. So if we
Yeah.
can attune ourselves to hearing the little then it makes our lives so much easier. We don't have to go through those
So
major
true.
things. Yeah.
I mean, I feel that, I mean, I make a conscious decision sometimes to eat movie theater popcorn. I mean, I know it's going to make me feel bad every time, which is, thank God I don't eat it a lot because I don't go to the movies a lot. But if I did, it'd be an issue. I mean, sunflower seeds. I remember when my kids were playing baseball. Oh my God, I needed like a 12-step program. I mean, but my mouth would be so numb at the end of the game. That's no.
I love it. The sunflower seed 12-step program.
I felt that way. It was hard. I was like addicted.
The
I was eating them in my
crunchiness.
car.
Is it the crunchiness that you're like
I
addicted to?
think it was like almost like that nervousness. It's either my nails or the seeds. So the seeds are going to replace that like hand to mouth. So here I am watching my kids' games and nervous. I did
Mhm.
a whole bag.
Oh my gosh, that's
Don't start. Don't start. You may not be able to stop. It's really crazy. All of those things, when we're busy. I was really busy back then. And, we didn't have any kind of schedule of eating. We're on the road a lot. I had 4 kids, busy, busy, busy. And, now I can be more conscious about, when I'm not as busy. So I can plan dinners and, I love that you can just order from these places and they send you all the ingredients and they're nice and fresh and you get to pick what you want. And I always try to make everything colorful on the plate.
yeah. Yeah. Getting a range of vitamins and what you're taking and
Yeah.
absolutely.
But you're a designer, so you're probably thinking that way too. Because I'm
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 always thinking about plating my food. Yes. Like how's it gonna
me too. My kids are like, I'll get it, and they're like throwing. I'm like, it's okay. I'll make your plate. Putting the bread like perfectly on the side.
exactly.
Yeah.
I know. It's like I love cooking, and this is something I never used to cook so much, but I really love cooking it now. Beets, because of how beautiful they are, and like with a saffron rice, so
Oh,
that really beautiful yellow rice with that
complimenting it.
the beets that are like
Dark
seasoned
red.
and kind of like you know cooked in some water and spices, and oh my gosh, it's so beautiful and it's so
It is.
simple.
So I can make things look pretty, but they don't always taste right. I'm known for this. The last cake I made, I left the parchment paper on in between the layers.
Sorry.
I know. And
That's
it
really funny.
was so bad. And thank God there was like a top layer that you could eat because it was just one layer that had parchment paper. But it was when my dad was alive and he's eating it. And he was like, it's not that bad. You're eating the paper? And he was, I'm like, oh my God.
He doesn't want you to feel bad. He's like just eating it anyway. He's like, oh, what's a little paper? What's a little parchment?
Won't hurt anybody. Oh God. I think that as we're moving into this, hopefully collective consciousness, that, people understand that they will be able to live a lot longer. You know how they used to say that people would only live like back then to like 50s? What happened? Because, you hear about people living in the Bible till they're like 600. Then you hear that people weren't living to past 50. Like, it's so strange. Like, what happened there?
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Well, I think probably that transition of living in community and starting like building civilization shifted things.
Yeah.
But, in ancient Ayurveda, just Ayurveda itself is the science of longevity. So that's what that
Yeah.
translates to. Like Ayur or Ayu is life, Veda is study of
Oh.
life, study of longevity. And there are methods that these ancient people living in the jungle came up with for living to like 250. Like now that's, there's documentation of this. That's pretty excessive too. But there were methods that they had for even just rehabilitating the whole body. Like I don't remember the name. I remember reading about this guy. He did this whole process and regrew new teeth. I mean,
What?
I know it sounds
Is
crazy.
it mewing?
No, I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know quite enough about this, but there are methods for rejuvenation of the body, like deep rejuvenation of the body. Not saying like 250 years old, but a
Mm-hmm.
complete lifespan is more like 100, according to Ayurveda, from things that I've heard and read.
A
So,
complete. Yeah. Yeah, it does kind of seem like the end of the line. Although we right now have a relative who's 100. But
that's
I know. So, okay, I asked my daughter this morning because I happened to come across mewing, Mewing. And I
okay.
was like, I thought it was really cool. It is a technique, it's an exercise that you do with your mouth, your tongue. So basically our jaws are going backwards and they haven't. There's a whole reason for it, but I didn't get into all of it. But you do this exercise every day, and it has to do with, putting your tongue on the roof of your mouth and like sucking the tongue into the top of your mouth, and it brings in this almost immediately. But it's because we're open mouth breathers. So I asked my 11-year-old daughter, 11 years old, on the way to school today, and I was like, I think I might try mewing because I say it straightens out your teeth. She goes, I do that every day. And I was like, what? But it's natural. It's an alternative to jaw surgery or braces even. And it also helps. I think the main study is against sleep apnea.
Yeah. Well, and there are a lot of studies around this, and there's a really great book called Breathe. It was on the New York Times bestseller list. I don't know if you've heard of it, and he goes into all of these studies and kind of came to it because somebody recommended to him to go to a breathing class
Hmm.
because he was having all these issues.
Yeah, nobody breathes.
Nobody breathes.
Nobody breathes.
In yoga and in Ayurveda, we do a lot of different pranayama practices. And so he
Yeah.
goes kind of exploring all these. And the ways that we do breathe, they change the way that our mind functions and they change the way that our body functions and the way, like the thing that I thought was really fascinating about this book is that, he looks into the function and formation
Yep.
of, and this speaks to the mewing that you're talking
Mhm.
about. Of the lower jaw.
Yep.
And this is all really substantiated with Ayurveda too, because, we say it's like when you breathe through your mouth, you're taking the Vata dosha in and out. So Vata is like highly movable, like I was saying. So if someone is breathing through their mouth, it's not surprising that their teeth would become very crooked. And
Right.
and it's really interesting in this book because he talks about how when humans started breathing more through their mouth, that's where you see more of a
Overbites.
need for orthodontia
Yeah.
and a lack of fit of the teeth.
Yes, and like your tongue doesn't fit in your mouth as much anymore. I was reading all and listening to all this stuff. But isn't that so interesting how we have changed over time because probably we're so busy we're not even breathing.
We're not paying attention to how we're breathing, and the main function is through the nose, and we do a lot of like pranayama practices, even alternate nostril breathing, which can stimulate different hemispheres of the brain and
Right.
balance our nervous system.
I love Ayurveda
Yes.
because it is so multidimensional.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're not just when you're focusing on the diet part, or I hate even call it, what do you don't call it diet too, or I don't know. Yeah,
We
diet. It's
that
diet.
um diet and
A
lifestyle.
diet.
We would call it in Sanskrit ahara, vihara, pranayama, aushadha. That's diet, lifestyle, breathing, and medicines.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I mean, we've been keeping ourselves so small and giving power away all this time when it's always been right here. And so I love that this is becoming a more familiar word.
Yes, me too. Me
Yes.
too.
I really do. I think it's very important. I think it's, I'm so big when it comes to reclaiming the power for the divine feminine, but just for humanity when it comes to our bodies, our health.
Absolutely. And it's so, there's so much going on in terms of even, I mean, this is a bit out there from where our conversation is right now, but where our food comes from, how, it's like we were on this swing, and I'm talking a generational swing from like eating so much meat, right? And
Mm.
now we're on this other end of the swing of like so much veganism, and from an Ayurveda point of view, both of those are not balanced, and from a planetary point of view, we need to be more on that vegan side because of the effect of so much meat eating and what it's causing. We look at the rainforests, we look at like all of these problems that are coming from that. But at the same time, when someone has a lot of vata dosha excess, they may need some of those like meat or animal products to ground them.
Right.
But it doesn't have to be this much. I often think about how in India the cow is a sacred animal. It's never eaten for meat.
Okay.
Dairy is so sacred. And it's used in so many medicines in Ayurveda. And so
Wow.
when we eliminate that, we eliminate some, opportunity for really deep nutrition, but it doesn't have to be a lot. You know what I mean? We don't have to have like these massive quantities of things. We can
Right.
eat primarily, vegetables and plant-based, but we don't have to fully eliminate, you know,
Balance.
and having a little bit of ghee or having, if someone can take a little bit of milk, depending on how it's processed. Our milk here is homogenized to give it a long shelf life, right? But
Mm.
the longer the shelf life, the harder it is for our body to process. So, even just cooking milk helps us to be able to digest it, or using spices helps us to be able to digest it. So, it,
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
yeah,
So,
little,
and also, I have B12 deficiency, always have. I struggle to do this. This is what my body does, not anybody else in my house, or just like how I got laryngitis. We all had a virus. I ended up with laryngitis. It's probably also from what I do. I talk a lot.
yeah. Well, it's the nature of what we do.
Yeah, all of that. But I mean, you have to think about just it is a very individualized thing.
It is. And it's individual per person, and then it's individual based on what their history is and what their dosha makeup is. And there's so many different pieces.
So you're finding out first what you were, originally, and then bringing it back into that.
Yes, that's the
I get
goal.
it.
That's the goal, to bring you back into balance for you, not
Hmm.
for some ideal of some other person, but
Hmm.
for you.
Okay, first time ever understanding Ayurveda and ever saying the word right. Yeah, thank you. You're a great teacher.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. If people want to work with you, like, what does that look like?
I do work with people virtually, so I do want to put that out there. And the easiest way to find out more about me is on my website at Sattvic Fern, or to follow me at Sattvic Fern. So when someone works with me, I give them a really long, exhaustive form. I just have to like warn people. Yeah, because, I don't want to forget to ask a question. So I use this really long form to help me to do that. And then there's also a dosha assessment that helps to get at like someone's original state versus their current state.
Mm.
And so then after all that is done, we have an initial meeting where we go through that form really, in depth, and I get a really deep understanding of who that person is and what the current state of their body is. And so then I put together a program for them on how to get from where they are now back to their state of health. So usually, we'll meet and then we'll meet again about 2 weeks later. And then it's often best to do like a monthly check-in for a few months, depending on where someone is along
Mm.
that progression. It might just be a few sessions, or some people may need a little bit more, depending on where they're at. When I say their constitution, I mean like
Yeah.
what the dosha balance is for them.
Okay.
what doshas are imbalanced. And so
Mhm.
then I give them like food lists, things that are
Okay.
going to be really beneficial to them. And
Gotcha.
then for me, I usually like to give them some recipes as a starter kit,
Yeah.
'cause it's like,
Yeah.
it's like, oh my gosh, well, I've never really eaten celery, or I've never really eaten beets, or, like there's certain vegetables that it might be foreign to them,
Or the
and
fact that you said put spice in milk and that might help, digest. My goodness. I mean, I would have never known that.
right. And so giving them really specific things, or sometimes, it's about a schedule, having a schedule for the day, and that can help to
Yeah.
reset things. You know, we are ultimately natural creatures. We follow a circadian rhythm, whether we want to acknowledge that or not, you
Yeah.
know. And the more that we do acknowledge it and work to use that to our advantage, the better off that we are going to be.
Oh, you're so right. And does your body not tell you you should not eat late at night and go lay
Right.
down? It never feels good.
It
It
never
does now as I get older. Maybe it did when I was younger, but it doesn't feel good to eat dinner really late at night and then go lay down.
Yeah, we can get away with a lot more when we're younger.
Oh, I know.
And then it catches up. Yeah.
Yeah, it totally tricks us.
But if we don't do it when we're younger, we can get away with
Yes.
more into later into life. So,
Yeah.
if someone is listening and they're younger,
It.
if you
No.
want to keep a stronger digestion for longer, pay attention to these things now. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was just thinking about this because I don't have an issue with drinking my coffee and I put milk in it, but it's chai. I get a dirty chai.
Okay.
So I get, 2 espresso shots on a dirty chai. So that chai spice might help digest because I have no problems at all drinking that. I never have ever. In fact, if I don't drink it, there's going to be a problem. That's the only time there's going to be a problem. So, and I just have one a day. But I mean, like, I wonder because I do feel like I'm a little, sensitive to milk if I have, ice cream and stuff like that. But I have no problem drinking it in my chai tea.
Interesting. So you kind of naturally came to
Yeah,
that
that spice on that. Yeah. So interesting. I didn't even think of it as a spice, but of course it is.
advice.
Yeah, it's just my coffee. I don't think about what it is. It's just a need. No, maybe one day it'll mess with me, but it's definitely not. I mean, if it did at this point in my life, I'm going, in fact, I've been having hot flashes this entire time. I'm everything is starting to not work with my body. That's not good for me. I mean, I can't even eat a Reese's peanut butter cup anymore, hardly at all.
A Reese's peanut butter cup. So what happens?
I don't know. It used to work out fine. I can
But
eat
what
all.
happens when you eat them
I
now?
would say heartburn. Yeah. It's too
Interesting.
rich now. Yeah, it doesn't make me feel good. So, I mean, in fact, people will buy it for me because they know I used to love it, but now I'm like, eh, yeah, I don't like it anymore.
Interesting. So like if we were to work together, we would look into because that usually if there's something like a heartburn that's like the knock of pitta being a little aggravated, right? And so we would look into what is that's causing that aggravation because it's not just the peanut butter cup. The
Mm.
peanut butter cup is kind of like making you aware. It could just be the peanut butter cup, but
Right,
most
right, right.
likely there are other things at play. And so, and this is just to give you a taste, like what it would
Yeah.
be. You know, So it's like, well, what is causing this elevated pitta? Are there other places that elevated pitta is showing up? Are
Mhm.
there places where elevated vata is showing up? So we would look into finding all of those different things and identifying where all that is in your body.
When you meet somebody, you're analyzing them. You're like, oh, she's got a lot of this and she's got less of this, and
Yes,
kind of
yes,
like you're
there
reading
are.
their astrology chart. Yeah.
Well, for each of these doshas, there are physical characteristics
Oh,
that
yeah, that's right.
come into play. And so, there's like even like within the face shape and the eyes and the eye shape, eye color, like all I do, I'm thinking about that. And then, even how someone moves. And so like for myself, for example, I have a lot of Vata dosha. So you'll see my eyes kind of move around a
Yeah,
lot, and they're dark and they're kind of like darting around. So there's a lot of movement.
I love
Remember, I
that.
said Vata has a lot
Yeah.
of like movement to it, So those of us who talk with our hands and kind
Okay,
of
so I
like
have ADHD too. So
expressive, well, and that can be ADHD can be excess vata. So
yes, right.
that might be part of your constitution, or it could be a current state. And I'm just saying this because for each person, that's what we have to understand. Is it happening because that person has a lot of vata and they're more prone to it, and we just have to manage vata? Or is that person more of a pitta type, but they have a lot of excess vata? And so we have to manage the vata without aggravating the pitta.
Hmm.
So, that's how it's individualized medicine. Could be a combo of them. So, and there's so many factors. Those are you
Yeah.
could have a lot of physical attributes of one, but then all of your mental attributes are maybe of another.
Mhm.
And and how you process things in your body could be different. So
Right.
it's very, there are a lot of different factors at play for making that determination.
There's so much to look at.
There is so much. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Karen. It was such a pleasure to meet you, and thanks for bringing all your wisdom to
Oh
the
my
list.
gosh, it was such a pleasure to be here. I'm so happy to meet you. Wish I'd met you years ago.
I know. Tell everybody where they can find you, your website, and also tell them about your friend's podcast or her YouTube so they can go and listen to your amazing story.
Yes. So you can find me at sattvikfern.com. That's SATTVICFERN.com. And you can find me also on Instagram with Sattvic Fern, and I'm also on Facebook. So and if you're in the Hudson Valley area, I have monthly cooking classes that I'm so excited about. They just started this past January, and they're on the second Saturdays of the month.
Hmm.
And Space in Between podcast. Sorry, I was thinking
Oh,
about Nomad,
nice.
which is the name of her company. Was doing yoga, but
Mhm.
studio free and kind of like in different locations. And that's where the name Nomad came from.
Yeah, and
So
that's how you met her.
concept from way pre-pandemic.
Wow.
Uh, so anyway, yes, she's a good friend of mine. And I was on her podcast telling my story of how I came to live in Beacon.
Yeah, and it's a really cool story. Lots of synchronicity, and it was a really cool story to just share with people that, if you just lean into, this path rather than trying to figure it out for yourself, really, it works.
Just explore, like
Yeah.
I could have just stayed where I was
Mhm.
and, figured something out there. But like, I don't know. I just wanted to try something new
Yeah.
and find my
Right.
community. And it just opened up all these amazing opportunities. And
That's super cool. Yeah, super cool. Very inspirational. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to meet you.
pleasure to meet you too. Thank you for having me on.
Thanks for listening to Sense of Soul podcast. And thanks to our special guests for joining me. If you want more of Sense of Soul, check out my website at www.mysenseofsoul.com, where you can work with me one-on-one or help support Sense of Soul podcast by donating to my coffee fund. Thanks for listening.